All right. A little highlights from last night. Some of the more interesting things that happened. One of the things that I was involved in quite a bit was a discussion, and we talked about that a little bit earlier, about changes to what's going on with public participation in city subcommittee meetings. So just really quickly, one of the things that I did was I noted on March 31st, I was there when the 6 people were asked to leave before they were allowed to speak. And that meeting was chaired by Bob Keller, and Bob just jumped up, said the meeting's adjourned, and left. When it was talked about at the subsequent city council meeting, he said he didn't want the public to hijack his life. So that was his reason for leaving. But then what happened is I attended the Public Safety Subcommittee on June 29th. And when I attended that meeting, I noticed that the public participation format had changed. And what it did was it referenced Government Code 54954.3, which said members of the public may directly address the legislative body concerning any item that has been described in the notice of the meeting, but the generalized public participation was no longer on the agenda. So that's when I went and I read that government code and found that that particular code, same paragraph number, said that for the agenda for regular meetings, that they are required to allow let me see here, they provide the opportunity for members of the public to directly address the legislative body on any item of interest to the public, providing that it is within the subject matter or jurisdiction of the body, and no action is taken for any item that is not on the agenda. So I went and asked that question at the city council meeting because I wanted an answer. And the answer I got was kind of unusual. I asked the question of the city attorney, and the city manager answered. And what he said to me was, I was reading the wrong paragraph. But I was reading the same paragraph that they had. So what I'm going to do now is I'll transcribe that. And I'm also going to go into the Brown Act where it describes which meetings the Brown Act applies to, and do a little bit more research. And if I end up believing that that meeting is a Brown Acted meeting, I will ask for a second opinion of the FPPC. So we'll keep you posted on that. Next thing that happened was the agenda item 13, which is the manufactured home rental agreement ordinance. We've already talked about that. You know that it passed. Yes?
Before you leave that, YouTube, we posted the actual Bob Keller closing the meeting on YouTube. If you punch in Bob Keller, March 31st, punch in Bob Keller, March 31st on YouTube, you can actually see the close of that meeting.
Yes, it is on YouTube. And we have the links to it. Yes. Then came agenda item 17, and that's the track map changes to the 5 Knoll project. And the senior center brought a ton of seniors there. Because what the developer was doing was he was asking for the track map to be changed. A piece of that property was, the short story is, a piece of that property was originally entitled for public benefit, and it was going to be a junior high school. And the school district said, no, we don't need it, we don't want it. And so now they wanted to entitle it for partially for a YMCA, and partially for a senior center, 3.5 acres for a senior center. And then they want the rest of the property back, and they want to put 154 more houses on it. So that went through last night. The grant to the senior center was valued at about another $3 million. So they have the land now. and they have $3 million from the city and $3 million from the county, $6 million. And so they got a ways to go in fundraising to get enough money to build a new or another senior center, and we'll just have to follow that process. Then came agenda item 18, which I think was the most interesting thing of the night, and that was an exclusive negotiation agreement with La Theater. And the short story of this is that city would like to bring that theater to the redevelopment block, that block that they tore the buildings down, that's empty in Newhall. And so what they're looking for is they're looking for a project that would bring the theater there, that would include a multi-use structure, and the multi-use structure would contain basically residential over retail, and in the retail, it would include a restaurant and some regular retail shops, and a parking structure, all in those 2 blocks. Now, the thing that made this interesting was everybody's been talking about bringing this theater to the valley for a very long time. And the arts community is all for this. They had 20 speakers there. There were 20 speakers there last night. 19 people spoke in favor of it. And I asked questions, and I guess that made me the person that was opposed. Because I asked questions about how much is this going to cost? Because in the agreement, it says they will be negotiating the city's contribution to the project. And partially, when the staff report got read, and we were learning, we're kind of peeling layers of the onion. And part of what makes this project hard to understand is that when you hear the staff talk about it, they talk about a project. And when they talk about a project, sometimes they're only talking about the theater. Sometimes they're talking about the whole project. Sometimes they're talking about, but they always say the project. So what I asked is, I heard them mention 12 or $13 million in the staff report. And I asked the question, what's the $13 million for? How much is it really going to cost us in total? And they didn't give me any answer. But after the meeting was over, Ken Striplin came and talked to me and said, of the $13 million, $9 million is going to be for the parking structure. And the parking structure is something the city's been discussing putting up for a very long time. However, today at Ahtna, Jason Crawford was there and discussed the project some more. And one of the questions that came up from the Ahtna folks was, wait a minute, will this parking what is this parking actually going to be used for? And there's people in other areas, and there's people using Metrolink. They're probably going to be taking up spaces here because the Metrolink parking lot is full during the day. So that question started to get raised. I asked the question, what about the residents of the residential over retail? Will they get their parking? And Jason said, yes, they will. There's going to be underground parking provided for the residents that are living over retail. But the retail location and the theater isn't required to build any parking. So that means that whole burden falls on the parking structure. And then it appears, it looks like we're subsidizing when Edwards moved in out here, they weren't allowed to move in without any parking, right? There's always a discussion of how much parking is required for a particular place. So will this parking structure actually benefit downtown Newhall, or is it placed there for the new construction? And those are some questions that still need to be, churned out and answered. So I've got something for you. At the next Ahtna meeting, the contractor that will be building the building and building the theater and the one building the mixed-use development building will be at Ahtna to answer questions from the public. And people at Ahtna today were saying, we'd like to see more people down here. So Aetna meets on the third Wednesday of the month, same day that we do, but they meet at 9 o'clock in the morning. I attend every meeting. And you're perfectly welcome to come down there, and we're going to ask some questions as well. In addition, the Aetna folks are compiling a list of questions for the city. They've asked that we talk about and ask if we have any questions, and you can either send them directly into social@aetna.net or com. I'll get you the actual address, or you can send them to me. I'll get them in for you so that we can get all these questions answered. This was our summer surprise, we call it, that we get belted with just before everybody goes on hiatus. And no action will take place on this with the council for at least until they get back in, I believe they get back in September? August? End of August? Okay, they get back at the end of August. And in the meantime, we can ask questions and they'll be negotiating. One of the things that I want to do is I'm going to put in a public records request and ask for the response from those developers, because one of the things that Jason said was that the amount of money that they're putting into this project is about the same as it was required in Pasadena or in other places. So it seems like it's the business model for these guys. And so maybe a better understanding of it can be observed if we know what they actually proposed. So we'll be keeping you posted. I'm sure to have that information by the next meeting. Any questions?
Where's the meeting?
Aetna, oh, I'm sorry. Aetna meets on Main Street in El Trocadero, 9 o'clock on the third Wednesday of the month. And I'm sure they'll love to have you there. Okay.